After my son died, his wife kicked me out of the house just 24 hours after the funeral, so her lover could move into my son's bedroom. She thought I was just a poor old carpenter who would quietly disappear. But as my son took his final breath in that hospital room, he whispered something with his last strength. Envelope. Safe. Protected you? I didn't understand then, but when I found what he'd hidden in the safe in his office, the safe with my birthday as the password, I discovered something I never expected. And what he left behind would destroy her completely. I appreciate you listening to my story. Before I tell you about my son's final moments, let me know where are you watching from today, and what's the time where you are. Son, please wake up, not today, not like this. Those were the last words I sobbed into my boy's chest, as the hospital machines flatlined at 11:47 p.m. on a cold Seattle night. I'd been sitting in that ICU chair for 16 hours straight, my 70-year-old carpenter's hand wrapped around Julian's, watching the monitors count down his life in beeps that kept getting slower. The room smelled like disinfectant and dying. Outside rain hammered the windows like the sky was grieving with me. Julian's eyes fluttered open one last time. Brown eyes, his mother's eyes. God rest her soul, found mine in the dim light. Dad, his voice was paper thin. I leaned close, felt his breath on my ear. Envelope. Safe. Protected you. What envelope, son? My throat was raw. Save your strength. His grip tightened, once then went slack. The monitor screamed that endless flatline scream, and my world ended. No. I pressed my hands to his chest like I could restart his heart through sheer will. Julian. Baby boy, come back. Dr. Andrew Fitzgerald came in, checked the monitors, checked Julian's pulse. When he looked at me, I already knew. Mr. Sawyer, he said gently, hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, he's gone. Gone. Such a small word for losing everything. I collapsed onto Julian's chest and sobbed like I hadn't cried since we buried his mother 42 years ago. My son, my whole world, cold and still and never coming back. Time stopped meaning anything. Could have been 5 minutes or 50 before the door opened again. Serena, Julian's wife, designer black dress, perfect hair, perfect makeup, bone-dry eyes. She glanced at Julian's body, then her phone. I came as soon as I could. He just died. My voice was gravel. 20 minutes ago. I know. It's terrible. She typed something. I need to call the lawyers. Make arrangements. She looked at me then, and what I saw wasn't grief. It was calculation. You should go home, Scott. Get some rest. I'll handle everything. 5 minutes. That's how long Julian's wife stayed with his body. Didn't touch him, didn't cry, just left. The nurses gave me space. Good people, nurses. I stayed another hour, held Julian's cold hand, talked to him about the bookshelf I was building back home in Cedar Falls, about Mrs. Murphy's cat, about how much I loved him. How sorry I was that I couldn't fix this like I'd fixed his broken bikes and broken hearts when he was small. Finally, around 1 a.m., gentle hands on my shoulders told me it was time. I kissed his forehead, cold as marble. I love you, Julian, always. The drive back to his mansion is mostly a blur. My old pickup truck threw rain so heavy the wipers couldn't keep up. Neither could I. The city lights smeared across the windshield like watercolors. But through the grief, through the shock, through the unbearable weight of existing in a world without my son, one thing kept echoing. Julian's dying words. Envelope. Safe. Protected you. What envelope? What safe? And why did my boy use his last breath, his very last words on this earth, to tell me about them? I didn't have answers. All I had was a hole in my chest where my heart used to be, and the haunting feeling that my son's final message meant something I didn't understand yet. Something I needed to understand. I couldn't sleep that night. Hell, I'm not sure I even tried. I got back to Julian's mansion around 1:30. The place was dark, except for one hallway light. Serena's bedroom door was closed, no light underneath. Either asleep or didn't want to be disturbed. I sat in the guest room, still wearing my jacket and boots, staring at nothing. Julian's last words kept looping in my head. Envelope. Safe. Protected you. At 2 a.m. I found myself standing in Julian's home office without remembering how I got there. The room still smelled like him. Coffee and that expensive cologne. Mahogany desk perfectly organized. Family photos on the walls, mostly him and Serena in those posed shots rich people do. But one stopped me cold Julian at 8 in my Cedar Falls workshop, both of us covered in sawdust holding up a birdhouse we'd built. His gap-toothed grin could have split his face. That's when I remembered the safe, behind his Stanford graduation portrait. He'd shown me years ago. Just in case, Dad. The combination's your birthday. I'd laughed then. He was 35 and healthy. My hands shook, moving the painting aside. Black metal safe digital keypad glowing green. I punched in 04-1553, my birthday. It clicked open. Inside one manila envelope. My name in Julian's handwriting. Dad, read after I'm gone. I sat down hard. The letter was 3 pages. Typed, but signed in pen. I could barely see through tears. Dad, 3 months ago I discovered Serena's affair with Byron Callahan, my business partner. I have proof, private investigator photos, hotel receipts, bank transfers. Remember at my wedding when you said, "Son, are you sure about this girl?" You were right. You saw what I didn't want to see. The cancer diagnosis came before I could file for divorce. So I did something else. I moved everything into an irrevocable trust with you as sole beneficiary. The house, the company, all of it. Serena thinks she's inheriting billions. She gets $200,000 annually from the prenup in the Aspen cabin. That's it. Theodore Hancock at Hartwell and Associates in Manhattan is handling everything. Call him. Dad, you gave me everything. Your time, your love, your values. You worked 2 jobs so I could go to college. You taught me a man's worth isn't his bank account, but his character. Let Serena and Byron think they've won. Let them show everyone who they really are. Then you'll know what to do. I love you. You were the best father a man could ask for. I'm sorry I didn't listen about her, but I'm not ashamed of you. I never was. I never could be. Your son, Julian. I don't know how long I sat there holding that letter against my chest, sobbing. My boy had known. Even dying, his last thoughts were about protecting me. Then I heard it, Serena's voice from downstairs, on the phone, laughing. I know, she said. Just a few more days. Once the old man goes back to Pennsylvania, you can move in. 3 hours after my son died, and she was laughing, planning. I folded the letter, carefully tucked it in my jacket pocket, right over my heart, and closed the safe. Turned off the light. Tomorrow was the funeral, and I wasn't going to say a word. Not yet. Julian had written, "Trust the plan." So I'd trust it. I'd let Serena and her lover think they'd won. I'd let them show the world exactly who they were. And when the time came, when they'd expose themselves completely, I'd honor my son's final gift to me. But tonight all I could do was go back to that guest room, lie down still fully clothed, and clutch my boy's letter like it was the only thing tethering me to this earth. Because right then it was. The rain began falling just as we arrived at Evergreen Cemetery the next morning. 200 people gathered under black umbrellas, and I stood alone in the front row. Julian's letter hidden in my jacket, watching strangers pretend to mourn my son. White tent, mahogany casket, elaborate flowers that cost more than my truck. Media vans lined the road. A tech billionaire's death was news. Camera flashes reflected off wet headstones. I wore the same dark suit from my wife's funeral 42 years ago. Still smelled like mothballs. Julian wouldn't have cared. Serena sat 3 seats away playing devastated widow for the cameras. Designer black dress, perfect makeup, dabbing dry eyes with silk. I'd heard her laughing on the phone until 2 a.m. Now here she was performing grief. Then I saw him. Byron Callahan. Tall, handsome, expensive suit. He stood with other executives, face arranged in appropriate sorrow. When he thought no one was looking, his eyes found Serena's. She looked back, just for a second, but I saw it. Serena spoke first. My husband was a visionary. She began consulting note cards. Julian built an empire, changed the tech industry. His legacy will live forever through his innovations. 10 minutes about his company, his success, his brilliant mind. Never mentioned he was kind. Called his father every Sunday. Cried at sad movies. Was a human being, not a balance sheet. Never said my name. Byron went next. Julian was the best business partner I ever had. A visionary. A friend. The way he said friend made my stomach turn. Then it was my turn. 200 faces, cameras rolling, rain beating the tent. Julian was my son. I started. Voice cracked. Didn't hide it. My best friend, my whole world. I had to stop. Breathe. When he was 8, I taught him to use a hammer. We were building a birdhouse in my workshop. He hit his thumb, cried. Then looked at me and said, "Let's try again, Dad." That's who Julian was. He didn't quit on the things he loved. My throat closed. He taught me that love is the only thing that lasts forever, that a good heart is worth more than any fortune, that family is everything. I miss him so much I can barely breathe, but I'm grateful for every single day I got to be his father. I couldn't say more, just walked back while people cried. Real tears this time. Serena checked her watch during my speech. After the service, people filed past offering condolences I couldn't hear. I stood at the graveside watching them lower my boy into the ground. That's when I heard voices behind the tent. Serena and Byron. He'll be gone by tomorrow. Serena's voice carried in the rain. The old man has nothing. Once he leaves, you move in. Julian's company is ours. What about the father? Byron asked. He's a carpenter from nowhere, Pennsylvania. He'll crawl back and we'll never hear from him again. Across Julian's grave through the rain, I saw them. Byron touched Serena's hand. She leaned in, over my son's grave, while the dirt was still fresh. I said nothing, just touched the letter in my pocket, the one that said they'd get nothing, that Julian had protected me from his deathbed. Let them think they'd won. Let them show everyone who they really were. Julian had written, "Trust the plan," so I'd trust it. Tomorrow Serena would tell me to leave. Tomorrow Byron would move into my son's home. And I'd go, quietly, with dignity, because I knew something they didn't. And when the time came, they'd know it too. 24 hours after I laid my son in the cold ground, his wife sat across from me at the breakfast table and told me to pack my bags and leave. I'd woken early, made coffee out of habit, the kind of thing you do when your world's ended but your body doesn't know it yet. Serena appeared at 8 a.m. in designer loungewear, sat down like we were having a business meeting. "Scott, we need to talk. I appreciate you coming for the funeral, but it's time you returned to Pennsylvania. Serena Julian just died yesterday. I thought I'd stay a few days. There's nothing to help with. I have lawyers, accountants. Byron's moving in today to help manage the estate and company." Byron, the man sleeping with my son's wife. Byron, I kept steady. Julian's business partner, Byron. Yes, we're supporting each other through this difficult time. Julian would approve. Would he? She stood, done with me. "Look, Scott, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. You don't belong in this world. This is Seattle. This is business. This is billions of dollars. You're a carpenter from Cedar Falls. Go back there. I'll make sure you're comfortable. Maybe 50,000 for your trouble." Julian's final thank you. 50,000, like I was hired help. I saw no grief in her eyes, no love, just calculation. "I don't want your money, Serena." She shrugged. "Suit yourself. Out by noon. Byron's moving in this afternoon." I went upstairs, packed my duffel, found the photo of 8-year-old Julian in my workshop, took it, left everything else. Downstairs, a moving truck was pulling up. Byron's things. I walked out. Byron's black BMW turned into the driveway. From my pickup, I watched Serena meet him at the door. She kissed him, on the mouth. Less than 24 hours after we buried Julian. The drive to Cedar Falls took 8 hours. I gripped the wheel, tears streaming somewhere around Ohio. Just kept driving. I got home around 8 p.m. Workshop behind my house, cold, empty, smelled like sawdust and loneliness. Nothing had changed in 3 days, but everything had. I sat on my work stool holding that photo. Couldn't even cry anymore. Just empty. Mrs. Florence Murphy knocked around 9. Known me 40 years. I heard about Julian, she said, softly holding a casserole. I thanked her. Couldn't eat. Couldn't work. Couldn't do anything except sit there holding that picture. On my workbench, my phone kept lighting up. New York number, over and over. Theodore Hancock, the lawyer from Julian's letter. But I couldn't answer. Not yet. For 8 days, I'd barely functioned. Then on day 10, staring at Julian's childhood photo, with my phone ringing, for the 4th time, I finally answered. "Mr. Sawyer." The voice was warm, professional. "This is Theodore Hancock. I've been trying to reach you." My throat was raw from not speaking. "I know who you are. Julian's letter. I'm so sorry for your loss. Julian spoke about you constantly. He loved you very much." I broke down right there. First real conversation since the funeral. Theodore waited while I pulled myself together. "Mr. Sawyer, I need you to come to New York. Things we must discuss in person. Things Julian arranged before he died." "What things?" "Not over the phone. Can you come to Manhattan? I'll send a car from the airport. I can drive. I need the time." "Tomorrow, then, my office, 412 Park Avenue, 47th floor, 2 p.m. I'll be there." While I sat processing that conversation, Serena and Byron were living it up in Seattle. Mrs. Murphy showed me the Instagram posts, worried. Expensive restaurants, designer clothes, champagne, exotic cars. Serena's caption, "New chapter, new life. Julian would want me happy." The comments were brutal. "Your husband just died. Show some respect. Gold digger," but others supported her. "You deserve happiness. Don't let haters bring you down." Byron posted too. "New opportunities, new beginnings." Like Julian's death was a career move. Mrs. Murphy's daughter worked at a law firm, heard through the grapevine that Serena was having trouble accessing Julian's accounts. Lawyers hitting walls. Some trust structure they couldn't break through. I didn't tell Mrs. Murphy I knew why. Next morning I did something I hadn't done in 10 days. Showered, put on clean clothes. My old navy blazer from Julian's college graduation. White shirt, khakis. Best I had. The drive to Manhattan took 8 hours. Left at dawn, watched Pennsylvania farmland turn to New Jersey. Highways finally saw the New York skyline emerge like something from another planet. Finding parking near 412 Park Avenue cost more than my monthly grocery bill. The building was all glass and steel, reaching toward the sky. I stood on the sidewalk, looking up, gripping my truck keys, feeling like a fraud. A 70-year-old carpenter in a moth-eaten blazer about to walk into a building where the doorman probably made more than I did. But I walked in anyway. The elevator to the 47th floor felt like rising into another world. The doors opened onto polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Manhattan I'd only seen in movies. A receptionist with kind eyes smiled. "Mr. Sawyer, Mr. Hancock is expecting you." Theodore appeared, 60-something, gray suit, silver hair, warm handshake that felt genuine. "Mr. Sawyer, thank you for coming." He led me to a conference room. The table was covered in documents, file folders, binders, a whole life reduced to paperwork. "Please sit down." I sat. Felt like I was sitting in the principal's office, except the principal was trying to tell me something I couldn't quite grasp yet. Theodore looked at me with something like compassion, like he knew what he was about to say would turn my world upside down. "Mr. Sawyer," he said gently, "Julian made absolutely certain Serena can't touch a single penny. Everything is yours." I stared at him. Didn't understand. "Everything—" Theodore slid a document across the mahogany table. At the top, in bold letters, "Scott Sawyer Irrevocable Trust." Below that, a number that made the room spin. Total assets $5.2 billion. I couldn't breathe. $5.2 billion. The number hung in the air like smoke. I don't understand." I finally managed my voice cracking. "Julian was successful, but this—" Theodore slid a thick leather folder across his mahogany desk. "Your son didn't just build a successful tech company, Mr. Sawyer. He built an empire." He opened the folder, revealing document after document. 3 weeks before his death, Julian restructured everything into an irrevocable trust. That means no one, not his wife, not the courts, not anyone can touch it. It's yours, only yours. My hands trembled as Theodore walked me through each page. 80% ownership of Sawyer Technologies valued at $3.8 billion. The Seattle mansion, $22 million. 3 vacation homes in Aspen, Maui, and Lake Como. 2 office buildings in downtown Seattle. Bank accounts I couldn't even pronounce the balances of. A stock portfolio that made my head spin. Even an art collection worth $40 million. "And Serena," I whispered. Theodore's expression hardened. "The prenuptial agreement your son signed gave her $200,000 annually and 1 vacation home, the Aspen property. That's it. She cannot touch the trust. She cannot contest it. Julian made absolutely certain of that." He pulled out another folder, this one thinner. "There's more, Mr. Sawyer. Your son hired a private investigator 18 months ago." 18 months. My stomach dropped. Theodore spread photographs across the desk. Serena and Byron at a restaurant, their hands intertwined. Serena and Byron entering a hotel. Time stamps, dates, locations, all meticulously documented. 18 months of betrayal while Julian was building his fortune, working 90-hour weeks, trusting his wife and his business partner. Julian accessed her phone records. Theodore continued showing me printed text messages that made my blood run cold. Plans, lies, mockery of my son while he was traveling for business. Then came the final revelation. Byron Callahan embezzled $2.3 million from Sawyer Technologies over the past 2 years. Theodore handed me bank statements, transfer records, forensic accounting reports. Julian discovered this 1 month before his death. He compiled all the evidence you see here and gave it to me with explicit instructions. Wait until the right moment. I stared at the mountain of evidence. My son had known everything. The affair, the theft, the conspiracy. and he'd protected me from it all. What do we do now? I asked. Theodore leaned back in his chair, a slight smile crossing his face. Now we wait. Serena's attorneys are already encountering walls. They're demanding access to accounts that don't exist in her name. They're threatening lawsuits they cannot win. Let her show her hand, Mr. Sawyer. Let her reveal exactly who she is. Then we strike. I thought of Julian's letter, or trust the plan, Dad. How long? I asked. Weeks, perhaps. She'll file a legal challenge. When she does, we'll end this in court, with Judge Evelyn Chambers presiding, a woman who does not tolerate fraud or infidelity. I nodded slowly, folding my hands over the photographs. Then we wait. 10 weeks later, the envelope arrived at my workshop in Cedar Falls. Official letterhead, Seattle Superior Court. Inside, a summons for December 15th, 9:00 a.m., Judge Evelyn Chambers presiding. The case title read, Serena Blackwood versus the Estate of Julian Sawyer. I called Theodore. It's time, I said. Indeed it is, Mr. Sawyer, he replied. Pack your best suit. Let's go finish what your son started. 3 months after I buried my son, I walked into that Seattle courtroom. Marble floors, high ceilings, carved wood. Everything felt too grand for what was really happening. Two people who'd never loved Julian, fighting over money they thought was theirs. Theodore met me outside at 8:45. Ready, as I'll ever be. News vans lined the street. Tech billionaire's estate battle, of course it was a story. Inside the courtroom felt like a cathedral. Scott and I took our seats at the plaintiff's table. At 9:15, Serena arrived. Designer suit, diamond earrings that could have fed a family for a year, hair perfect, makeup flawless, 3 lawyers in $1,000 suits trailing behind her, and Byron Callahan beside her, matching her confidence, both of them practically smiling. She saw me and her face twisted. What's he doing here? Byron whispered something I couldn't hear, but I caught his smirk. Judge Evelyn Chambers entered at 9:30. Sharp. 50s steel-gray hair, the kind of presence that made everyone sit straighter. We're here to resolve the estate of Julian Andrew Sawyer, deceased October 15th. She began. Serena's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, Gregory Barton, representing Mrs. Serena Blackwood Sawyer, the widow and rightful heir to... I've read your filings, Mr. Barton. Judge Chambers turned to Theodore. Mr. Hancock. Theodore stood. Your Honor, Theodore Hancock, representing Scott Sawyer, sole beneficiary of the Julian Sawyer Irrevocable Trust. Gas rippled through the courtroom. Serena's whisper carried, What trust? What is he talking about? Theodore projected documents onto the screen. On October 3rd, 3 weeks before his death, Julian Sawyer restructured his entire estate. The mansion, 80% company ownership, vacation homes, investment portfolios, bank accounts, all transferred into an irrevocable trust, naming his father, Scott Sawyer, as sole beneficiary. Serena shot to her feet. That's impossible. Julian would never cut me out. The judge's gavel cracked. Ms. Blackwood, sit down, or I'll hold you in contempt. Serena dropped into her chair, face crimson. Barton tried to recover. Your Honor, my client's prenuptial agreement guarantees... The prenuptial agreement, Theodore interrupted smoothly, covers assets in Julian Sawyer's name at time of death. Since all assets transferred to the trust before death, the prenup's division clauses are void. Ms. Blackwood receives her stipulated $200,000 annually and the Aspen property. Nothing more. $200,000, Serena shrieked. That house costs more to heat. Judge Chambers' gavel came down harder. Final warning, Ms. Blackwood. Theodore pulled out a letter. Your Honor, may I enter into evidence a letter written by Julian Sawyer on October 3rd, explaining his reasoning. Proceed. Theodore read, and Julian's voice filled the room through his words. The discovery of Serena's affair with Byron, 18 months of betrayal, evidence, photos, hotel records, financial transfers, how he chose to protect what mattered me, how I'd raised him alone, sacrificed everything, how I was the most honest man he'd ever known. Whatever Serena thinks she'll have, she won't. Theodore read. Every cent belongs to my father. He'll honor my memory better than she ever could. The courtroom went silent. I saw tears on strangers' faces. Then Theodore dropped the final bomb. Additionally, Your Honor, Mr. Byron Callahan embezzled $2.3 million from Sawyer Technologies over 2 years. He displayed forensic accounting reports. Julian discovered this along with the affair. Byron jumped up. That's a lie. Theodore nodded toward the back. 2 federal agents stood by the door. The SEC and FBI have reviewed the evidence. Theodore said. Mr. Callahan, they'd like to speak with you. Byron spun to Serena. Do something! You said you were careful, she hissed. You said the old man didn't know anything. You said your husband was clueless. They turned on each other right there screaming while cameras captured everything. The judge's gavel thundered. Bailiff, escort Mr. Callahan out. They handcuffed Byron and led him away. The courtroom erupted. 1 week after the hearing, I returned to the Seattle mansion one last time. Theodore met me with the keys. The place was empty. Serena had cleared out. In 3 days, furniture remained, but every personal trace was gone. The master bedroom looked like a hotel room. The living room walls were bare where Julian's photos had hung. His office desk sat empty, not even a pen left behind. I walked upstairs to his closet. In the back corner, I found a cardboard box labeled Dad Stuff in Julian's handwriting. Inside was the toolbox I'd given him for his 16th birthday. The wooden handles were worn smooth from years of use. On the side, a brass plate I'd had engraved, "To build your dream son. Dad 2000. My billionaire son had kept his father's old toolbox through college, through startups, through everything, and he'd used it. I held it against my chest and finally let myself cry. Not the shocked grief at the hospital, not the numb pain at the funeral, but the deep, wrenching sobs I'd been holding back for 3 months. I cried for the boy who'd stood beside me in my workshop learning to sand wood. I cried for the man who'd forgotten what mattered and remembered too late. I cried because he'd loved me enough to protect me even in death. 3 months later, I stood at a podium in a Seattle hotel ballroom. 50 news cameras, reporters, flashing lights. Theodore beside me for support. I wore my navy blazer and a new shirt. I'm announcing the Julian Sawyer Foundation for Honest Work, I said. $500 million dedicated to scholarships for children of blue-collar workers, vocational training programs, and mentorship connecting skilled tradespeople with students across the country. I gripped the podium. My son built a billion-dollar empire, but that's not what made him rich. Julian was rich because he knew the value of honest work, of integrity, of love. He learned that in a small woodshop in Cedar Falls, Pennsylvania, where I taught him that a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account, but by the work of his hands and the love in his heart. The room stood and applauded. A reporter called out, "What about your daughter-in-law?" Serena made her choices, I said. Julian made his. I'm focused on building, not destroying. 6 months after that, I was back in Cedar Falls for good. I'd sold the mansion and donated the proceeds to the foundation. My old workshop was now twice as big, filled with 12 teenagers, learning woodworking every afternoon. Dylan Foster, 16, was struggling with a bookshelf joint when I walked over. I showed him the technique patient guiding his hands. "Mr. Sawyer," he asked, "is it true your son was a billionaire?" "Julian had billions of dollars, yes," I said, "but that's not what made him rich." "What did—" I pointed to the photo on the wall. Julian at 8 years old, in this exact workshop, holding a hammer covered in sawdust, smiling bigger than the sun. He knew how to love, and he knew what mattered. He just forgot for a little while, but he remembered at the end. That's what made him rich. Dylan looked at the photo, then at me. "I want to be rich like that." I smiled through tears. "Then you're halfway there already, son." That evening alone in the workshop after the students left, I held Julian's old toolbox in my hands. My fingers traced the engraving "To build your dream son." "I'm doing right by you," I whispered. Tomorrow was the 1-year anniversary, and I had promises to keep. 1 year after I buried my son, I sat beside his grave on a sunny October morning, so different from the rain-soaked day we laid him to rest, and told him I'd kept my promise. The headstone read, "Julian Andrew Sawyer, beloved son, brilliant mind, generous heart." Fresh flowers surrounded it. I'd arranged for weekly service. "Hi, son," I said, my voice catching. "It's been a year. Feels like yesterday and a lifetime." I told him about the foundation. 200 kids helped in year 1. Full scholarships. Vocational schools in 5 states now. I'd built a complete facility in Cedar Falls, named it the Julian Sawyer Workshop for Future Craftsmen. "Dylan Foster, you'd like that kid. Reminds me of you at 16. Curious kind, works harder than anyone." My throat tightened. "I miss you every single day. Every morning I wake up and forget for 1 second, then I remember, and it hurts all over again." I placed my hand on the cold stone. "But I understand now why you did what you did. You wanted me to be okay. You wanted your money to mean something real." I took a breath. "I'm not happy, son. I don't know if I'll ever be truly happy without you, but I'm okay. I'm building something that lasts, just like you taught me." I kept my promise, I whispered. I honored you the right way. 5 years later, I stood at a podium before 500 people at the Foundation's annual gala. I was 75 now, gray-haired, but steady. Theodore had helped me pick out a proper suit. The screens around the ballroom showed success stories, former students who'd become engineers, contractors, teachers, small business owners. Over 1,000 kids helped in 5 years. 1,000 futures built. Then the lights dimmed and a video played. Julian, at 10 years old, appeared on screen standing in my Cedar Falls workshop, covered in sawdust, holding a hammer too big for his hands. When I grow up, I want to be just like Dad, his young voice called out. My own voice decades younger. What do you want to be, Jewel? I want to build things, like you, Dad, and help people, like you. The video ended. I heard sniffles throughout the room. I gripped the podium, steadying myself. That video was shot 35 years ago, I began. Julian grew up. He became greater than me, a tech visionary, a billionaire, a leader. But in the end, he remembered what I taught him in that little workshop, that family isn't about blood or money. It's about who stands by you when you have nothing, who loves you for who you are, not what you have, who protects you even after they're gone. My voice grew stronger. Julian protected me. And now, through this foundation, he's protecting thousands of kids who just need someone to believe in them. That's wealth, that's legacy, that's love. The room erupted in applause. Everyone stood. Late that night, alone in my hotel room, I opened my laptop. An email from Dylan waited. Mr. Sawyer, I got into engineering school. Full scholarship. Thank you for everything. I smiled through tears and typed back, Julian would be proud. I'm proud. Go build something beautiful. I looked out at the Seattle skyline and whispered, I kept my promise, son. The next morning, I visited Julian's memorial office in the Foundation building. On the desk sat our photo together, his old toolbox, and his letter to me, preserved in glass. I touched each one, then stepped out and gently closed the door. The plaque read Julian Sawyer Memorial Room, Founder's Legacy. I walked toward the elevator, toward whatever came next, carrying my son's love with me. Because true wealth isn't what you leave behind. It's who you loved and who loved you back. As I sit here in my workshop tonight, teaching another generation of kids who remind me of Julian, I want to share something with you. Don't wait like I did to tell the people you love what they mean to you. Don't assume you'll have tomorrow. I had 70 years with my son, but I'd give every dollar of that $5 billion just for one more hour. God blessed me with Julian. God gave me the strength to survive losing him. And God showed me that love, real love, never dies. It just changes form. My son protected me even in death because I'd spent his whole life showing him what unconditional love looked like. That's the lesson, friends. Grandpa stories like mine aren't just about betrayal and justice. They're about what endures when everything else falls apart. This true story taught me that wealth measured in bank accounts means nothing if you die alone. Julian was a billionaire, but what made him rich was knowing how to love. Grandpa's stories are meant to be told so you don't make our mistakes. This true story is my gift to you. Love fiercely. Forgive quickly. And remember that God doesn't measure your life by what you accumulate, but by who you loved and who loved you back. Build something that lasts. Honor the ones who sacrifice for you, and never ever take a single day for granted. That's my true story. That's my prayer for you. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below telling me about someone who loved you unconditionally. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe so you never miss another story about faith, family, and what really matters. God bless you all.